we have invited experts, and I would like to request from you plain speech, please. Do not hurry, because we have simultaneous translation, and please remember that translation is on. First of all, I would like to give the floor to Maria Zolkina, political analyst, who will inform you on the public opinion survey results. And Maria will describe the shift in public opinion in Donbas during last time. Thank you, Ms. Iryna. It's right that public opinion is important information when we think in the context of settling the conflict in Donbas. This is also an important message for our foreign partners. Ukrainian society in general, this is rather peaceful nation. This could be supported by the fact that even in current rather difficult situation, many Ukrainians try to reach the compromise in settling the conflict. But the difference is, the difference in opinions is in the degree of the compromise. So 47% believes that peaceful resolution of the conflict could be reached via the compromise, and only 13 or 14% of Ukrainians believe that the conflict might be resolved via armed way. 1/3 of residents in the south, in the center, and in Donbas, they believe that this compromise could be reached via peaceful means. The main among the main recipes of settling the conflict, number one is pressure on Russian Federation, pushing it up to withdrawal of the militants and weaponry from the east of Ukraine. And number two recipe is successful revival of territories, revival of normal life in the liberated territories. Of course, such things as special status of Donbas are supported by minority of population. Only 13% believes that it is it might be useful. In Donbas, also only 13% believes that it might be successful. Elections in non-controlled territory are favored by 13%. Amnesty as efficient way to resolve the conflict is seen by only 6%, and Ukrainian movement towards NATO. So the main solutions are pressure on Russian Federation and efficient state policy in liberated territories. As for the Law territory. 48% respondents believe that they should come back to Ukraine on the same administrative and political conditions as it was in the past. 25% agree that upon reintegration, those territories might pretend for more autonomy. In Donbas itself, 42% of Donetsk and Luhansk residents believe that those territories should be reintegrated to Donbas, to Ukraine back, without any additional privileges. Actually, today, more people believe that we should preserve the same status of the territories as before the conflict. Elections, there's, so to say, attractive topic in the context of conflict settlement, proves to be less popular. 43% of Ukrainians believe that no elections could be held in the occupied territories in nearest future. In Donbas, 35% believe that successful elections are possible. Also, the attitude towards peacekeeping forces had changed. As of today, up to 50% of Ukrainians take this more positively, and only 21% perceive this possibility negatively. What is more important, the idea about international peacekeeping forces became more favorable for the local residents of Donbas. Last year, only 16% agreed with this idea. And now 39% of the Donbas residents wishes to have the international peacekeeping forces in Donbas. Also, there is a big issue how Ukrainian state has to tackle the problem of the Donbas territories. 23% of Ukrainians believe that those territories should be insulated. 19% Ukrainians, 19% of respondents believe that the relations should be preserved with the existence of the corridor. 12% believe that there should be that the contact line should be preserved and to preserve economic ties. 16% stands for soft reintegration of the territories. But actually, there is no coherent public opinion in this issue. The idea about bringing the issue of occupied territories into a referendum this opinion is split. 42% believe that the referendum could be held, while 37% abstain and reject from this idea. So we should not, we should very carefully approach to the idea of referendum. The idea to recognize the Donbas territories as occupied territories was supported by 46% against 23% of the negative opinion. But in Donbas, there is the bigger part of those who are not sure whether it should be done or not. And this suggests that there are some additional issues which should be explained and discussed in mainland Ukraine, and to explain some political arguments, political realities which have been already agreed and coordinated in Minsk agreement, etc. And here we should explain what might happen to those territories which may remain uncontrolled for a long period of time. Now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Roman Besmertny, who is very much familiar with the problem from inside. You may see that during the whole period of our service, we see that the major expectations fall upon stronger pressure on Moscow. Only 15% of people believe that military resolution of the conflict is possible. So the closer is the contact line, the less people account for power and force. Also, people people in the liberated territories believe that we should revive these territories efficiently, and then people in the occupied territories will see successes and agree. But Russia wishes special status for the territory, amnesty for participants of the separatist movements, and elections before regaining Ukrainian control. Only up to 20% agrees with this. Well, so my question to you, what is your vision of this situation? What are real ways to peace, and whether we can force Russia to change its position, or this is a deadlock situation? Thank you for the opportunity to speak. From the very beginning, I would like to say that from the first day of my participation in the process till today, I am a strong supporter of the gradual, maybe long-term reintegration of these territories to the mainland country. And my argument number one, we are very bad ears of our predecessors. If we have any doubts that we can bargain on the territory of the country, some territory of the country, I cannot make even assumption that some part of Donbas or some part of Ukrainian land could be someday surrendered to other country. This is the territory of our country, and if this current generation appears unable to bring it back under control of the of Ukraine, then the next generation will do this definitely. As for the situation, there is a set of problem issues related to the internal political identification of the status of the problems which we face. The second, there is the international situation which is full of problem issues too. There are regional and continental and global problem issues. The issue of Ukrainian and Russian relations in the past, today, and tomorrow. And the third component to which I would like to draw your attention, this is the level of human relations, intrapersonal relations, that is personal relations with people, whether there is a possibility to tackle all those problems on the framework of Minsk process. No. Let us look at the Minsk agreements which do not have any special status. The actions that ended on January 1st, 2016, in summer 2015, I presented my vision of settling the conflict. I was not allowed to submit this as my personal official point of view, but my personal, because for me in summer 2015 it was obvious for me that that path was unrealistic, because the suggested document, the suggested instrument did not allow to answer the problems which I mentioned. Europe at that time did not identify this war as the war. Ukraine, for some ununderstandable for me reasons, called these anti-terrorist operations. And thus it had put the essence of the problem beyond the framework of international legislation and national legislation. And this step actually did not allow to use modern high-tech to resolve the problems. We observed how the obsolete, outdated model was attempted to be used in modern conditions, while the Middle East and Africa were turned upside down with the modern technologies. We try to use these archaic models to hinder the contemporary processes. And when I ask the question, how do we interpret the means of the following notions: the state, the border, whether we recognize the supremacy of the human rights, I heard no answer. Actually, this resulted, all that mistakes resulted in today's situation, when we have to structure our thinking along the items which I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, and based on this structured thinking, we have to produce the long-term document comprising the logic steps. Each of them should be based on the previous steps, and this process should be based on mutual responsibility and system of sanctions against those who violate or breach the agreement. Actually, as of now, we do not have the solutions because we do not have responses to the current situation. I believe the situation that we face today requires a very modern, very up-to-date approach. I hope, nevertheless, that this conflict will be resolved via intrapersonal relations. And those intrapersonal, individual, personal relations, family relations should go ahead of the institutional relations. I believe that clergymen, families, researchers, journalists, there should be mutual penetration of parties, informational fields, etc. But this would require a long period of time. Now, the topic of Russia. This problem should be resolved similarly as an interaction of the process that happened in the occupied territory, in Ukraine in general, at the European continent, and in the world globally. Pay attention, our work is not vain. In the press release before the visit of Mr. John Kerry, State Secretary to Moscow, we first observed that there will be Nagorno-Karabakh, Syria, and the war in Ukraine and Donbas. After 2 years of the conflict, we have seen this finally. In the context of those negotiations, Transnistria situation was discussed, and the conflicts in the east of Belarus and the situation in the east of Baltic countries was discussed. The work carried out today by Kremlin, it is aimed at activation of separatist movements, and by the way, on Warsaw Summit, Baltic countries, between the two seas, Black Sea bloc, and and all the territories up to China. That is, all pre-border activities of Kremlin were discussed. And we won't resolve this issue without China. So we have to apply a comprehensive approach to build up the security models, global security models. And this brings us to the second question, the format, role, and mission of the OSCE. We have to open eyes on the role and status of the Security Council of the United Nations. We should not be ashamed to state that all those institutions require revision, or at least bringing back to the statutes of those organizations. Let us look at the status. The OSCE statute and also the UN statute had blocked those components which had to be used as a preemptive tools to prevent the situation which we have today. And which, in case of successful application, would ensure gradual reintegration of Donbas. With this, I would like to give the floor to Oleksiy Ryabchyn, NMP. Oleksiy, would you mention, please, the place of these problems in the parliament? And what do you suggest? I would like to thank to the organizers. As an MP who is interested in this issue, I feel the vacuum in expert opinion to form division. But unfortunately, among politicians, this topic remains toxic. When you ask this question to my colleague MPs before the cameras, they say things which should be perceived as correct by broad public, but we do not know the correct answers because the problem which are involved, they are very complicated. So there are some there is the framework of Minsk agreements, but the situation is slightly different from what was foreseen by Minsk agreement. So here in Ukraine, we finally look at different scenarios of isolation or at the scenarios of integration, and we have not chosen any specific scenario instead of choosing some solutions. Ukraine pretends that it is implementing Minsk agreements in order to promote extension of sanctions. But in the international arena, we feel not just Ukraine fatigue, but we also feel that they believe the conflict would last rather long. What I also do not like, speaking about Donbas, we speak about territories. And always I hear this in terms of territory. Not so many people try to ask what we will do with these people. How to gain control over hearts and minds of people. And we do not see this in the discourse. Sometimes we hear about those difficulties experienced by IDPs I just came from the eastern regions, from pre-border oblasts, and I saw how people, how IDPs are treated in our government agencies. That's unfair treatment. There are a lot of hardships experienced by those people. Those people who cannot leave the occupied territories, or the situation at the crossing points, which is terrible. This again proves that the state's position is indifferent, or it is vague. We are not inclined to develop a comprehensive public policy. In many aspects, those people who try to develop policy as to Donbas, they have never been there. They even never visited the controlled territories. Yesterday, I met a rather famous German ecologist. We visited together with him. We visited a big plant producing wind power plants, and he was shocked that despite all the discourse about stagnation in Ukraine, etc., that plant in Kramatorsk, it continued to function. And he was shocked because many European experts just cannot go there. When we tried to take to Kramatorsk G7 ambassadors to show what's going on in the liberated territories of Donbas. I also do not like attitude of Ukrainian authorities. I think that that people in power do not do enough. Yesterday in Facebook I showed a bridge in Slavyansk which was ruined by Gherkin troops, and this is the third year in a row when the government is unable to repair the bridge which was ruined, and still there are discussions who has to rebuild that bridge, either central authorities or local authorities, and thus we demonstrate to people that the government is inefficient. When we speak about elections, Opora network told me a story that some group of people came, stated that they are election commission. And people who are brought by one political force, they actually do not have the documents that they are election commission. This is even uncontrolled territory, and we cannot organize elections in the controlled territory in line with the fully in line with legislation. And my last point, what we can start doing now. Our soldiers still fight for the territories, and each day we hear information about casualties among our soldiers. A group of MPs is dealing with the issues of relocated universities. They are in Vinnytsia and Kryvyi Rih, in Kharkiv. We developed a draft law allowing candidates in Donetsk and Luhansk who graduated from the schools in Luhansk. They may enter these relocated universities. So our aim was to allow new young generation born in Donbas not to stay there, but to relocate in mainland Ukraine. And without bringing high educational institutions, without free media, without free NGOs, it won't be possible to hold fair elections in Donbas. And when we have passed the law allowing that future students to enter relocated universities in mainland Ukraine, I received many telephone calls from parents who said, we have to remain here, but our children can escape. Reintegration of territories, reintegration is not bringing back of territory, but bringing back of people. Of course, we cannot speak about occupied territories, but I know about some results of the surveys that GFK made by phone. It's not a representative survey, but nevertheless, I would like to mention the in mainland Ukraine, I think we observe a sort of a thaw, and now we are approaching in views to the east. For example, in respect of peacekeeping forces and about NATO. Again, bigger part of population is now supporting NATO. But when we speak about controlled and non-controlled territories, the difference in opinion is huge. I am an optimist. I believe that public opinion could change, but as of today, this remains the problem, especially when it comes to young people. That's why I would like to give the floor to a person who is familiar with the situation on both sides, to Sergiy Garmash, how to reintegrate these territories in human dimension.
Frankly speaking, I saw the results of the survey, so there was a shock for me, because I see that there is no public opinion on this. If 2 years ago we understood that this is war, but some people believe that this is not war, and now there is contradiction. People are ready to find compromise, but at the same time they do not want a special status. Compromise and special status is the same thing in such respect. And I believe that this disorientation of public consciousness, public attitude to this issue, is the consequence of a direct policy of our Ukrainian state, this power that brought the situation to the dead end. And I can't see any steps that were made during last year that would be directed to solve this problem. Everything I see is directed to conservation of the conflict. And both respected politicians said that this next generation will solve this issue. But, you know, I have my home there and the graves of my relatives. My sister lives there, and I cannot go there. And of course, people who live there, they are dissatisfied. Or some people were forced to go back there, and they cannot have good relationship with the bandit power and the insecurity that exists there. And people do not see support of the state. And they say that there are Ukrainian citizens, but they didn't address these people and do not do anything. And we see that this conflict continues, and there will be less opportunity for reintegration because new generation appear. So 3 years for a child, it's a considerable amount of years. So in schools, they are taught in such a way it will be very difficult to provide other opinion to this person. So that's why I cannot understand why we try to decide what we should do with Donbas. In laws, everything is said. We should just implement laws in constitution and the national defense law. And the law on ADO, everything is said. If there is aggression, military aggression, the president should do this, this, and this, step by step. But the president doesn't do this. And for me, the insecurity here is not in the fact that Donbas won't be freed, but also the power understands what it commits crime, and it won't, and it understands the risks of change of power, and some people would just be in prison. Unfortunately, minister didn't came. And also trade with terrorists. Last week we all saw the video footage as Mr. Nasalik discussed in Donetsk with so-called Minister of Taxes, the supply of coal to Ukraine. So the position of the current power and ignoring of the laws by the power is the crime. And maybe they will be punished for this when the power will change. So this current power will try to prevent this responsibility. So they won't allow democratic elections. So we go along the circle. And this is very dangerous. That's why we can speak a lot about reintegration, about military freeing of Donbas, but we shouldn't separate these things, because if we are speaking that this is a hybrid war, what can be freeing on the military way? So in hybrid war, this is the last stage, so we should be prepared in all different ways, diplomatically, in the information sphere, and we build towers, but we do not have content to direct there. For those people who lived under occupation, and we do not have them, but we build them. And diplomatically, as Roman said, world doesn't see it as a war, and internal policy. And the politicians, they say that next generation will solve this problem. But I remember the words of our president, who at the beginning of this year said that until the end of the year, this question will be solved. So the president should, so in such a way, the opinion of public is solved, and if some people are for full isolation of this region, it means that this is a separation from Ukraine. This is separatism. So there is no understanding what fatherland means. People do not understand what country means. Our fatherland, that this is our territory, and when people of Donetsk are blamed that they didn't fight with the hands, with the arm in their hand, and why did we pay taxes and where is the defense of the state provided by the constitution? We don't have it. And as a result, what we have, no one takes responsibility. And people see and blame those who are from these regions. And the more that we speak about it, the harder it will be to bring these territories back. The more time it takes, the stronger our enemy becomes. They have institutions, they have full-fledged states, and they will. They have nationalization process, and the main for ISIL is not oil, but taxes that they introduce in the territories that they seize. And the same with LPR and DPR. And we as Ukraine pay those taxes to them because we trade in coal with them. We give them salaries and they pay taxes to their budgets. And all the enterprises that work there, they pay taxes. Covertly or overtly. Some enterprises have double registration, so they change their name. And some lenders from Russia also appeared, and enterprises work, but they do not pay to Ukraine anything. So we lost the initiative. We do not control this process. And at the end, they will take all our enterprises. We will lose those taxes that these enterprises provide to Ukrainian budgets, but we reinforce their economy, their tax system, and allow these states to be. So this is the price of treason that we see from the side of our power. And I don't believe that they are not capable. I believe they just don't want to, because it is very, they just want to trade in coal without control. So it's, they bring this coal for the power stations, and they say that people should work there. And why in these 2 years we didn't remake these, why didn't we change the type of coal for this? And they say that it is very expensive to bring coal from South Africa, but I spoke with the specialists. We can redesign these boilers, and no one wants to do it because they have profit out of it. So we have many problems and a lot of pessimism. Mr. Fesenko, maybe he will bring some optimism. No, maybe I would be a realist in such a case. What is interesting, what we see in the surveys and in the real situation in the ETO area and in the public opinion and negotiation in this discussion, everyone criticizes. They say everything is wrong, power acts wrongly, international partners do wrongly, but no one says how we should do it. No one says. No one said what should be done. What is the real alternative? Roman, to change the council, Security Council, it's more difficult than to solve the conflict in the east. And maybe it won't be, it can't be done. So the situation is difficult, and that should be diagnosed like this. This is a bad situation, and it's easy to say, to implement laws. If, for example, according to the law, we start the war, and it will end in military defeat of Ukraine and our isolation and the break of relationship with our partners whom we don't like, but we do not have others. So this will be the result of this. So we can do this, but we won't have more tanks. This discussion lasts for a long time, but I repeat, if we declared war condition in 2014, we wouldn't win. This is an illusion. This is utopia. You can tell it to anyone else, but you won't convince me in this. So you introduced, for example, military states. So this is a way to totalitarian regime. We had the same Supreme Council. We would have a bigger situation with the president if we introduced this military martial state. And now we have some sort of certainty. And for comparison, I know from different sources how they assess the situation in these territories. Those who are the elites in the territories that are occupied, they see the main problem as uncertainty as the main problem. So the situation is uncertain. They do not know what will be next. So they do not know how they will live and what status. So this uncertainty is a matter of concern for them. So they speak mainly about humanitarian help, not about tariffs, pensions, or salaries. Humanitarian aid is the main issue for discussion there. And also the main problem that is at the core of our roundtable, so readiness for compromise. The power is ready for some compromise, but these compromises, the power is ready for, and also the position of Ukrainian side, the format or Minsk. So this is an ambiguous situation, and also the Minsk agreement implementation and the future of Donbas. There are different views on this. So Mr. Garmash told us that the situation is uncertain. There is no dominant position in the public opinion. And this split is traditional for Ukrainian society in many issues, not only concerning these issues. And here there is no clear policy of the power, and also the society is split in terms of values. So the different East and West, they have different attitude. One side wants peace, others wants to continue military actions, but there is no clear understanding of mechanism. But there is split in values. That is the problem. And politicians and many human society, they have critical attitude towards compromise on the whole, so they are not ready for the compromise. So this is the answer to the question about amnesty, elections, or special status. What to do next? Where should we move? So maybe every person at this table has his own options, and how I see it. In order to make decision about real ceasefire and also coming out of this conflict, we need OSCE police mission or some peacekeepers contingent between at the border, and without that we won't overcome this crisis, in my opinion. So social economic relationship, I believe that taking into account that these broad relationship, there are no clear geographic boundaries. 80% of pensioners from that territories, they get pensions here. And at checkpoints every day, there are 25,000 people daily. So this is a massive transition. So it's impossible to isolate. That would bring other problems in different form. So I believe that I'm a proponent of the option, if there is real ceasefire, with the help of peacekeeping contingent, there should be informal social and economic ties, including trade. If we trade, we finance that side, but they finance our side in such a way too. So energy sector works both for them and for us. And about the boilers, why didn't we stop? Because there is an interest of Akhmetov and other people who are connected with this business, and we should understand that if the situation is not changed, this shadow business will continue, and about whether it is profitable. So if each third ton goes for bribery, and I spoke about it with the Akhmetov people, and that would be more profitable for them if that territories were integrated, because they pay both sides, so to help to the terrorists and to our side. And if we are speaking about optimum option, to have real elections, and there is a problem with elections in frontline area, and I agree with it, we need the transitional administration. Provisional administration, of course, if there are LPR and EPR, there won't be any elections. Elections is the instrument to stop LPR and EPR, but they should be stopped in the electoral process if we will be able to do this. So otherwise it will be utopia. And of course, stop of the separatist republics. We should formalize this in the negotiation agreements, and there is this is an optimum scenario in my opinion. And as Roman Petrovich said, this scenario will take time. It's not easy to do it, but in my opinion, we should go into elections after ceasefire, but first we should restore social and economic relationships. So some variant of Transnistria, but now we have Karabakh variant. And when there will be readiness, we should have provisional institutions, and then we should have elections. So this is a real scenario, and it is unavoidable. This is gradual freezing of the conflict. The conflict is not frozen. It is far from it. So there is intensity of military actions, but we move in the direction. And this conflict could last for years, some sort of Karabakh and Transnistria. So we fire and we trade, fire and trade. So this is the worst variant, because this state will promote export of criminal practices, people with arms, and shadow military economy will be legitimized. And we should come out of this situation, but the preservation of status quo with intensity, high intensity of fire. These are the trends until the end of the year. I won't see any prospects for election or finding solution to reach some compromise. The position of the West, they want to overcome the conflict as soon as possible. This is egoistic but understandable. So I also communicate with negotiators, and they have intolerance, and they are irritated by the situation. They want to get this process out of the deadlock, but maybe it's very difficult to do till January. The current administration will end, and there will be elections in Germany also, and in these conditions it is highly unlikely that the problems in Ukraine will be solved. So the changes in the elite and the position of Russia, what I hear from our diplomats is confirmed by other sources. So they just want to wait. They want to wait when the West, there will be business as usual. When the West says that they connected sanctions with Minsk agreement, and they see the Brexit and the situation in Turkey, everything develops in the way they want it. Maybe they exaggerate somehow, but they believe that they should wait, and they want to wait because they believe that our internal conflicts will lead to the situation of 2014. And I hope that it won't happen, but this is the approach of Russia and Surkov group. They try to institutionalize the republics and to freeze the conflict. The position of Ukraine, there is a dilemma. We cannot get rid of the Minsk agreement because this is our obligation before this is our we undertook obligation according to them, and we cannot implement these agreements, especially political part of these agreements. And in the result, de facto, I agree, we preserve status quo. So the main idea is to preserve the status quo because there is no other option. We cannot fight because the West is against it and we cannot agree. And today the negotiations are focused, as I know, to elaborate some roadmap in order to implement the Minsk agreement step by step, and they negotiate these matters. Whether they will succeed, we do not know. As to peacekeeping contingent, it is desirable but unlikely, and we should be ready that this conflict will be half-frozen. And how to live in a condition of half-frozen conflict? What policy should be in relation to these territories, to people, not only to the territories? What should be economic policy and trade policy, whether it should be isolation, full isolation, or half isolation? So there are options, but we should create content for this. And in what way we should act in a negotiation process. So we should take into account a lot of factors, but we should understand that the longer these territories, these republics are outside Ukraine, the less they will have the wish, I mean people, not the territories, to return to Ukraine, because they would feel that they are separated from the state, and if a generation pass, maybe we won't there will be great separation, and both sides we will be accustomed to living separately. So there should be reintegration, but in what form, on what conditions? So we shouldn't legitimately refuse of these territories, but some political forces, such as Samopomosh, they say they do not need such Donbas. But if we refuse such Donbas, the Russian side would say, if you refuse, maybe you don't need Crimea as well. So we should remember this. We shouldn't reject any of the territory. We should think how we would live with these territories. And we should elaborate a strategy of step-by-step returning of these territories. There is no quick scenario. There is no such a thing.
It's obvious that the problem cannot be resolved without beyond the context of international relations. We had some negative comments about our foreign partners. And I would like to ask the question to Mr. Bogdan Yaremenko. Having spent many years in the professional diplomacy, could you characterize the international partners? Thank you for this opportunity to speak and for the opportunity to deal with the information presented in your service, and your service allows to see the movement in public opinion. I understand that your service requires some financial resources. At the same time, Mr. Fesenko in many details described the international situation. I believe that this year we will witness the clinical death of the Minsk process, partially because of future elections in the United States, in France, and in Germany. Also, we understand that by the end of the year, we'll experience international pressure from our partners, while Russia would play its role trying to make military pressure in Donbas. At the same time, disguising its provocative role. In this situation, it's important to understand what people think about current situation. And in this context, I think that in September and in November, we would need further surveys of public opinion as of that moment. Especially keeping in mind the future difficult position of Ukraine. Especially in the context of sharp increase in tariffs here, in municipal tariffs here in Ukraine, keeping in mind our unstable democracy and declined economy. As for current discussion, for me, those figures which you mentioned does not mean the question that we have as the topic of our discussion. Is it possible to avoid frozen conflict and reintegrate the occupied territories? Actually, these are two sides of the same coin. 2 months ago, we carried out our own social survey and came to similar conclusion. And we saw the following attitude. Ukrainian people believe that, yes, we wish to have peace, but peace at any cost is not wanted. And actually, we should look for proper ways for peace, thinking about roadmap for Minsk agreements. We should realize that without involvement of Ukrainian people, no roadmap would be implemented. The president of Ukraine, the position of the president is rather weak because his vision is not shared by the country, is not very much supported by the country. When Western diplomats say, why you do not wish to implement what your president had signed, but this only shows that we need to have a consensus in society. Out of your survey, there are some figures. 39% of people believe that current situation in Donbas conflict, the responsibility should be shared by both sides. And the attitude of the South from Ukraine. In the south of Ukraine, there are many supporters of separate status for Donbas. One of the parliamentary forces had stated that the southern region had announced southern regions of its electoral base. And experts should carefully study whether Russia and this political force has any real influence on the electorate of the southern Ukraine. We should pay special attention to this. As for the movement forward, the figures that you have shown, that Ukrainian authorities have a good space for maneuver. The bigger autonomous status could be very clearly covered by decentralization, but not with political decentralization, but with the financial decentralization. Ukraine actually may state that we wish to decentralize authority and so Ukrainian authorities may agree with the financial decentralization, budgetary decentralization that will cover local communities, not the regions. And this may change the field, the game field, and Ukraine's position in the election, in the negotiations. As far as I can see, at the international level, among our partners, I observed the following shift, which was demonstrated by a recent NATO summit. They recognized that the conflict in Ukraine comprises two parties, the Crimea and Donbas. And for the first time, the occupation of Crimea was recognized as a real problem, because Minsk agreement, they are aimed at Donbas exclusively. And the second important achievement of Warsaw Summit was that the international community had stated security first and elections the second. That is, no agreements could be achieved unless there is a real ceasefire. But I agree with Mr. Besmertny that after several months of ceasefire, even after some months of ceasefire, elections won't be held fairly, because the conflict is rather old. Although the power, the local authorities in Donbas had institutionalized itself. So there should be ceasefire, withdrawal, and only after normalization of the situation there could be some transition period, and then there would be elections. What to do with teachers, what to do with traitors, what not to do with the citizens of Ukraine. The problem of reintegration exists for liberated territories. to bring the territories back, and having returned the territories back, we would start thinking how to reintegrate people. But we should create channels of information for them and maintaining communication with them. As for Crimea, we have special procedure for school graduates coming from Crimea to when they wish to study in Ukraine. And here we again come to the issue of status of Donetsk and Luhansk Oblast. Again, this is politics. And here we come to the wish of Ukrainian oligarchs to have business as usual with Donbas. So this is politics. Unless this politics is changed, we won't succeed in this. We have to pass the law on special status of the of Donbas. About partial isolation, we should separate between business and running business and commercial structures. Thank you. You know, we had to travel to the liberated territories, and recently we had seen more proactive work of young people, and these are raised activities among young people in the liberated territories and in the IDPs. And here I would like to give the floor to one of the representatives of civil society youth, Mr. Vitaliy Sizov from he is an analyst from the Donetsk Institute of Information. I've heard that Vitaliy mentioned, I know what to do. We more and more pay attention at the international aspect, which of course is important. But we do not pay attention what's going on site. I think the issue is that Ukrainian political elite does not wish to reflect the situation, to reflect on the real situation. When you ask the Minister of Occupied Territories, do you know what's going on in the occupied territories? They say, we do not know. When you ask the State Fiscal Service, how much taxes do you get from that information? They say, we do not get taxes from that territory, although that's not true. So we observe opposite tendencies in this society. Today we have heard that we should not give up from our people, and at the same time we should not trade with the terrorists. But the question is whether a miner in remote village remains without any employment, what would prevent him from going to band formation to earn some money for his family? As a political analyst mentioned, that this is a deadlock situation, and we cannot think about large projects. about reintegration. We cannot put more passage points at the checkpoint instead, and to speed up the process of passing the border. We discussed simplified procedure for school graduates from occupied territories, but we do not have statistics how many school graduates would wish to enter Ukrainian universities after 6 hours spent at the checkpoint. Nasalek went to negotiate about coal. In 2015, Donetsk Railroad had double management in Donetsk, but they had their office in Donetsk, but get orders from Kiev, and they sent 69 million tons of cargo, and half of them were cargoes from occupied territory to non-occupied territory, and 1/3 this will just coal. I have statistics about school graduates. This year, 1,000 school graduates from Donetsk Oblast had passed the state exam. The last year, 1.5 thousand school graduates registered themselves in Ukrainian territory. So there is objective economic chain. If we stop that coal on the border, some enterprises in Kharkiv and Zaporizhia Oblast which work with this coal, now we offer to cut this channel. We rejected from the trade with that territory. And Deputy Minister burned some big trucks on the border. Well, now there is ruble as a currency there. And now they are disintegrating economic and monetary. When we do not control borders, we should not give up from control of the other aspects of their life. We believe that in case of strong blockade, their economy would collapse. People go to the band formations. Why do you think that all miners will go to the band formations? Who may prevent from shadow schemes with Russia. Let us stack with the procedure. So what is your summary about the martial law? Let us declare the martial law. But there are not so many people willing to fight. But why do we need the martial law? Let us give the floor to one more speaker. Now Ukraine should preserve existent connections in economic life, in education, in legal system, for people to be able to get Ukrainian documents. Business is now, business there is reorienting to Russia. I would like to give the floor to Dmytro Tkachenko, representing I like people in Donetsk. They are very realistic people. My first statement is that we should fight not for the territories but for people. I disagree with the idea that first we bring back territories but then we bring back people. After 5 years, we will nobody to bring back. Several days ago, we presented our survey on the self-identity of the controlled and non-controlled territories. Two figures, 18% of respondents call themselves as DPR citizens. 20% are afraid of the reintegration of occupied territories to Ukraine. What does this suggest? This suggests that in DPR and LPR there are efficient, closed informational societies with the monopoly on truth, and this had brought some fruit already. People have fear, but not because that they think that there will be fascists waiting for them in Ukraine. But there is the problem that Ukrainian authorities never communicate to them. Neither president nor prime minister has monthly sessions assuring people living and working there, who work in medical sphere, in educational sphere, who worked in municipal sphere. Nobody promises to preserve the year or the future pensions, years of service, etc. People are afraid of being stigmatized. Also, year by year, our informational influence on that side is decreasing. We should neutralize the informational influence on our people. And by the way, there are 2.7 million of people. Donetsk TV tower could be its signal could be received in Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, in Zaporizhia Oblast, in Luhansk Oblast. Each year, the cost of Donbas occupation should raise for the occupants. We should control television in the occupied territories. We will have up to 30% of people who will get access to alternative sources of information, and we will ruin the monopoly of DPR and LPR in informational space. Our survey on self-identification and self-consciousness will make the basis for informational counteraction. But and we encourage other agencies to pay attention to this problem. We have to produce many informational products for these territories. Social opinion surveys proved that 60% of population remains indifferent, and they wish to stay aside, and we should win attention of those people via proactive informational policy. So when 5 or 10 or 15 years ago we will bring these territories back, we will reintegrate these people. We should start this reintegration now. Thank you.
So we have different opinion what to do, and the diagnosis coincide, but what to do? So the situation is, so we have a diagnosis, but we are uncertain about what should be done. If you have questions, please address the question. Maybe some minor comments, because I believe that you have major comments. Please. Good afternoon, Sergiy Garmash, Hromadske Radio. I am IDP myself, and I share the opinion that we should fight for the consciousness parallel with the fighting for the territories. And Kiev acted different ways in 20 years, and the question to Roman. So on what conditions DPR and LPR are ready to be integrated? So what is their limit of concessions? So thank you for your question. Firstly, I do not conduct negotiations for 3 months, more than 3 months. I do not take part in these negotiations. I understand that there is broadcast. There was such a case. We were late for the meeting, and we came to the premises, and there was Mr. Gryzlov, who said that he would change the situation, and he instructs the representative of LP and DPR what to say to Ukrainians. Imagine this, the delegation comes out, and there is such an instruction. So the technology of the process 0.0. When I say about interpersonal communication, and in Donetsk and Luhansk, Maidan will happen and will change the situation. Because Russians are afraid of the influence. I do not dramatize the situation. I believe that there should be supremacy of human rights above all. We should look at the situation from modern prospects. And I believe that we have options and opportunities. And I presented documents, 11 documents that were presented by the group of Roman Besmertny, and none of those documents were related to Ukrainian state institutions, and that is the tragedy. We spent resources for this war that do not deal with the resolution of the situation. And this is the case that there should be a strategy for integration. And I said to the people, you should listen and hear, because everything we spoke about is in the concept of strategy and tactical instruments of reintegration. And I don't like the idea of using the term hybrid. You know, if this runner who came in Rome and said that there is hybrid war because it differed, because there was a new sword there, Athens, I mean. So take Levitan announcement and listen to it carefully. Without declaration of war. And what happened on the 14th? There were mistakes, fascist, then without announcement. But what it meant? It meant that they made a statement, and we should have made the statement, and then there should be tactics, and this is operative management of the situation. And I told it to those people in Donetsk. The situation can be managed, but let's look at the situation from the side of dominant principle of supremacy of human rights and understanding modern technologies of crisis situation management. And also taking part of Akhmetov, Boyko, and Medvedchuk, Surkov, and those who are in Rostov-on-Don, and those who deal with metal scrape, and also those who deal with VAT refunds. So we should look on the situation on the whole, and also the exchange of people who were illegally detained and those people who were convicted before. So we should look at this from these prospects of modernity, not in the format of 1946 and formal base, but today's legislation. This is a difficult work, and we should build our management here in Ukraine, because we have multi-layered approach. There is no single point of management. Also, we should look at Minsk processes, because different stakeholders and contact groups and subgroups. I know about all these stakeholders, but they duplicate the actions, and one should establish goals, others should use instruments, a third should provide management, and fourth working at level of laboratory. So options A, B, C, so there should be variance and forecasts of the situation. So this is not done. Other questions? Ilya Lukash, New Time. I have two questions. First question to Dmitry and to Sergey. Sergey told, how can we continue to pay some money for coal, salaries in occupied territories? By this we reinforce self-proclaimed republics, and also Dmitry said that Ukrainian power should communicate with them, and to guarantee that communal enterprises employees would have their rights protected, they should pay pensions to accumulate salaries and then pay them. And how can we resolve this contradiction? And maybe a question to Iryna. Is there such an experience in the world that the state continues to support people in the occupied territories in order not to... I bring the example of Transnistria. They have 5 passports. They get a pension in Transnistria, then they come to Chisinau, they get a Russian pension, then they get some money for their own people, and then they are involved in some sort of activities. So I have relatives there, and they do not want to join any of the countries, and they are even ready to fight for this. And maybe the preservation of this economic ties will bring the situation that we will lose them. Thank you for your question. This is a difficult issue. I won't say that we should pay for communal workers, but I agree with Dmitry. There is major problem. There is no position in relation to people that live there. Who are they? They are hostages. They are proxies of terrorists. Where is the categorization? For example, if the head of the region or communal worker, are they traitors or are they just workers? So I prepared for the parliamentary hearing a special report, an act for non-punishment, where the categories were mentioned who won't be punished for the work they do there. And we shouldn't pay salaries and pensions until this territory is occupied. It should be done by Russia. And they should do this. They are not interested in creating social and political tension there, because Maidan can happen. And I heard my colleagues speaking, and I thought about North Korea, and they didn't have Maidan in 50 years. And here we should identify the relation of the state towards this territory, and from this we will establish the logic: who should pay, who is a traitor, who is not, what is the level of responsibility. And now we do not know whether it is an occupation or not, and we have such a gap. And maybe I won't be provided with the final word, but I want to express my opinion about one matter. Today we were speaking about what should we fight for people, for the state, for territory or for people. I analyzed this issue, and I would like to say, as a realist, the state will always fight for the territory, because the territory is non-renewable resource. Population can be renewed, and this is the policy of the state. The state always will fight for the territory, and people fight, not the state. People fight not for people, not for territory. They fight for values. And each person has his own values, and people take arms in their hands and go killing other people. So the priority here in resolving of this conflict, should be done in information sphere. We should fight for the minds of people, and in such a case there will be less blood and less military actions. I will continue. If we fight for people, if we fight and building country where people are important, we should pay people, because for 1,000 or 2,000 rubles that are paid, they are paid by occupation regime, they can't survive there. If we are saying that they are important for us, and we have long-term strategy to reintegrate them and to return our citizens in a Ukrainian state, we should understand that we should pay, even if it is difficult for someone to deal with it. And if we fight this war and we have a long-term conflict, only information campaign, information steps can help us. I confirm what was said by Sergey. And what about IDPs? They have 400 hryvnias here. I'm not speaking about that. I don't say that this is a fair system. I won't say about the amount of money. If we are saying that they are valuable for us, if we are saying that we build a country where people are important, we do not have the right to leave these people behind. It's about 1.7 million people that are under occupation. We cannot say that we will pay attention to you only when we bring back this territory. In this way, we will lose. So we can end the dialogue, just go out and say that the reintegration is impossible. I would like to add, I do not know about communal workers or medics, but I agree that these people, they should get clear signal that if you didn't cooperate and didn't use weapons, you are not a criminal, and they should understand there should be a clear signal from the president and the prime minister. And these people, if they are citizens of Ukraine, how they should deal. About relocated higher educational institutions. The state relocated them by the ministry order, and the teachers, they had the choice whether to be relocated or to stay and work in phantom educational institutions. Of course, some knowledge and skills are provided, and they are promised to be given the diplomas of Russian Federation, but they bring these people to Rostov-on-Don or other city in Russia just to get diploma. And some engineers who stayed in the occupied territory in Makiivka Building Institute, the teachers there, the associate professors, in order to get diploma, they help students to write their diplomas in order that would be provided with Russian diplomas. How can we bring these people back? There should be a special commission created. In 2, 5 or more years, we should be ready for this. And not Minsk should bring a scenario to us, but there should be a commission created, headed by rector or security service officer, and there should be separate cases of teachers reviewed. If people are staying there, for example, a person is 70 years old and the person just got the salary in order to survive, so the case should be reviewed. And, or for example, head of the chair, and can this person hold positions, for example? And if, for example, you are a pseudo rector and you were building a so-called state, so these people will come under amnesty, or but they won't be able to hold office. So these people now, they cannot work here. So this is a specific case of higher education. I do not know what to do with medics, with communal workers and other specialists, but the Ukrainian state should provide clear signal to people that when we return, what will be done. They should understand what the situation will be. So what Oleksiy said, that should have been done at the end of 2014. But did someone do this? So 114th district, there were some people who were involved in separatist referendum organization. So these are the elements of state policy that should be elaborated, not for the future, but for today as well. And about the relationship and attitude to other people, the questions are asked by the people from that side. It's not only about salaries. For example, if a person worked for Ukraine, but to pay salary for communal worker in DPR, there is no such responsibility of say. But what they say, if we return, will we be punished for working for DPR? So, and this is the question of amnesty. If we reject amnesty, but we are speaking about the people who worked for pseudo-state structures. So here we should identify clearly, and this idea with Commission, if we have lustration in relation to people who worked in Yanukovych's times, so the same should be introduced in relation to those who took office in separatist states. And workers, they shouldn't be responsible for salaries or carrying out their professional duties. And so people envy pensioners in Lugansk because he get Ukrainian pension, he get LPR pension, and have some humanitarian help. And the parallel category are people who get Russian money for some work. For example, window repair in damaged houses, so they get the money. So these are the categories who are envied, so this is the top of the pyramid. So this situation isn't just, and our pensioner lives for small money, and that they get our pension, Ukrainian pension, and then they get Russian money, and this is not fair. And of course, we should think in what way we can, how we can overcome the situation. So also there is trade option. We shouldn't break our ties because it's better to trade than to wage war. And it's worse when it is in shadow. And how can we regulate the sphere in order to prevent manipulation? We should think about it and about hybrid element. You spoke about international experience, Transnistria, for example. We should analyze the situation there. Yes, you are right. And I give you an example. People were in Syria, and from Damascus you can go to Raqqa, to ISIL capital, and they trade with among themselves. We are not alone in such a situation. This is just a reality of modern world. So if we speak about whether we should fight for people or for the territory, we cannot separate these issues. We won't be able to bring back people if the territory will be occupied. If someone believes that by propaganda, external propaganda, we can campaign and bring these people back. Maybe some people who disagree, maybe for them it will be true. But it is a long-term process. And they won't do any Maidan there. It is an illusion, But the system of information propaganda, it should be in place. You should be a realist to change consciousness. I will give you a simple example. In Russia, they use internet at the same level as those who use TV, but it didn't influence consciousness because they have their own values, and the majority of people, and guys can support this, the majority of people in their territories do not trust Ukrainian media. And you can do a lot, but if you will be neutral, in case these territories are returned to Ukraine, and there will be no prosecutions of those people who worked for LPR or DPR, and you will provide information about social situation in Ukraine. And one more point about illusions. In the survey, the majority of people believe that in in the territories of Ukraine everything will be all right. These territories will return. But I'm afraid that this is not the case. There is a case of Abkhazia. There was contrast situation between Abkhazia and Georgia. The situation was more difficult, but no one wanted to return. That's why this is an illusion that we should reject. We should work both with territory and people, but we shouldn't believe in illusions that we can provide information to them and they will return in Ukraine. We should fight both for the territory and people.
One more question. Unfortunately, I cannot hear the question. Conducted several surveys in the territories which were liberated, and we observed dynamics as to those territories. At the very beginning, there was a despair. Then gradually people restored their confidence, and gradually these people become more equal to the opinion of those territories which are in mainland Ukraine. So in the occupied territories, there is a lot of lie, which is never reviewed. You can just compare the Komsomolskaya Pravda in Russia and the Komsomolskaya Pravda in Ukraine, and there is very big difference. And this brings me to the idea that unless people just know the truth, in the occupied territories, separatists are afraid of Ukrainian coming back because they heard that there will be the right sector back, there will be Bandera supporters back, then they will be forced to speak Ukrainian. And now they are more afraid of Ukrainian authorities than of the right sector, because they have seen the right sector in their territories. But I agree that unless the territories are liberated, we are unable to act. Well, thank you very much to all the participants. We have heard rather interesting ideas. We will continue this work and focus on some specific issues like the issue of elections, issue of amnesty, etc. I hope we will have a possibility to hold focus groups and representative